Hello, this is Guy64, and in this video I'll be talking about what sort of hardware upgrades I've done to my DTL-H2000 workstation PC, which you can see right here. Ever since I received the boards back in November of 2015 as a first place prize from the PSX Dev Code Blast 2014 competition with my game Marilyn and the Magic World, actually a fan game of someone's character, but I have permission though. And I won first place in that competition, and the prize was the DTL-H2000 boards. So actually this computer was not built from the ground up. It's actually just an existing slot 1 Pentium 3 computer that I have lying around, and what I basically did was that I just slapped the boards onto the thing and configured stuff to get it working, and there it is. It's ready to go. But however, over time I've done some upgrades, added new, better components and stuff, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And also this video is to make up for the lack of interesting content as of late, simply because I haven't worked on something that's worth putting out a video of as of late, which is a problem with being a lone wolf developer while being deprived of ideas or still working on the innards of the PS1 and stuff. But anyhow, without further ado, let's see what sort of hardware changes I've done to this computer, shall we? So here's the insides of the computer itself. As you can see on the bottom, those are the DTL-H2000 boards sitting on their respective 16-bit ISA slots. The top board is the CPU board, and the bottom is the I/O board, which is where you connect your controllers and other devices such as the CD-ROM. The CD-ROM drive, the DTL-H210, 2010 or the 2510, which I don't have, and a mysterious connector supposedly probably for the CD-ROM emulator, which consists of an SCSI controller and another ISA card for this thing, which connects from the SCSI controller or hard drives to that thing. But I don't have that set up, and I don't really need it. I can always use a stock PS1 or an emulator if I need CD-ROM access. And also, unlike most people who own a DTL-H2000, where they essentially, or any console development hardware, where they essentially keep them as more or less like trophies, I actually use these boards to do, well, PlayStation homebrew development, mostly assembly coding, because these development boards support the SN Systems PSX debugger, which is the best PlayStation debugger I've ever used in my life. Much better than no cache PSX. But there's a few advantages of no cache PSX, where you can like view primitive packets, stuff that you can't really do with the DTL-H2000. But in terms of debugging capability with assembly code, it's the best. Originally, this board, this system ran mostly on onboard hardware. These two PCI slots were not populated. Only the first slot populated by an Ethernet card, which is this one. It's your typical 10100 megabit per second LAN adapter, which I am no longer including because the new cards took up both the usable PCI slots. And down there is the third slot, which I cannot use because it's blocked off by the development boards, and usually when the slots are configured like that, that PCI slot is shared with the ISA bus, and it cannot be really used, I think. So yeah, originally it was this was running on onboard hardware, and when I found the video chipset, the SYS6236 on the motherboard, to be rather sucky because it's very slow when it comes to 3D, I decided to just slap in this S3 Savage 4 32MB PCI graphics card because this thing was lying around unused, so I decided to throw it in there for better graphics and video. And better video indeed. This card allows me to select a resolution of 1152 by 864 at 70 Hz, which is the highest non-60 Hz resolution that my ALC monitor can handle. which is a treat, and having a higher resolution for programming stuff is always great. And on top of that is a Yamaha YMF724 card to replace the onboard sound chipset, which was an ESS Solo 1. While the Solo 1 was okay, the problem is the sound output coming out from it sounds very tinny, as if there's like a bass filter. There's no bass and it sounds really nasty for me. So screw that onboard sound chipset and then just use the YMF724, which is much better. Also, the reason why I choose a YMF724 is not only because it's a much better sound card, it's also because I wanted to integrate this card into a single package of a computer, which is this one. Since I used the YMF724 for Adlib music stuff, originally I was using this HP Vectra up here with a 600 MHz Pentium 3 processor. But since I don't like to rewire computers whenever I need to either do music or do programming for the PlayStation, I decided to just integrate both things into one unit, and for well convenience, and so that I won't like wear out the keyboard and mouse connectors by unplugging and plugging over and over again. So yeah, actually also the onboard VGA and the onboard sound would go to the external to the expansion slots with these bracket things. This is the old tomato style, where before ATX many of the connectors would connect almost always to the expansion slots, and the only ports where you can connect the only ports that are built into the casing are usually the serial and parallel. But you can replace the serial with a printer with the VGA connector. So in here is the memory, which is 256 MB of SD RAM, which you could really see there. Yeah, there it is. This has been in the system for since I've put it together. It consists of 264 MB SD RAM sticks and one 128 MB, totaling 256 MB. Also up here is an Intel Pentium 3 550 MHz processor. Originally it was running on this processor, a Pentium 3 as well, but this one's running at 450 MHz, 100 MHz slower than that. And interestingly, this processor is one of those made from Intel that are actually manufactured in the Philippines. When they used to have a factory here before they shut it down sometime in 2006 or 2007. So hashtag Pinoy Pride? Not really, since we're not really contributing to the tech field very much. We mostly are onto distributing OFWs or something along those lines. So here's the hard drive, a 20 GB Samsung. It's still the same hard drive that this computer came with, and I also a floppy drive. And however, I added this zip to 50 drive when I first put this computer together. This wasn't here. I decided to just stick it in here because this drive has been lying around doing nothing. So I decided to just stick it into the system. Sort of a quick backup system, pretty much. Even though I could use like USB flash drives instead for backups. And a Sony CD burner drive, which is actually a bit iffy now, and I don't really use it for burning. But since it's a Sony drive, it's pretty fitting for a system equipped with PlayStation hardware, since Sony. And here's an AT, your typical AT power supply. Yeah, this system runs on an AT power supply. However, if you look here, too bright. If you look closely here, you can see that there's an ATX connector right next to it, but I'm not using it right now because this case was built for an AT equipped with an AT power supply. However, it can still be advantageous. So in an event where the AT power supply fails on me, which hasn't yet, I could always switch it with the newer ATX power supply, but I would have to modify this the power button somehow, replace this switch with a micro switch, and then wire that to the motherboard to turn on the ATX power supply. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the system. Also for the innards and the upgrades and changes I've done to it. Also, I was going to add a sort of one of those ouch, it's grounded, one of those what's that? Oh yeah, those cooling fans that attach to the expansion slots for additional cooling for this thing. But unfortunately, the store where I was gonna buy such a cooler from apparently threw it away before I even got to buy it. But well, I think I can just find a similar thing somewhere sometime in the near future, hopefully. Maybe not, because I live in the Philippines where everything old is usually thrown away. But anyhow, that's pretty much the insides of this thing. It's a pretty decent setup. This is actually many times more powerful than what the original licensed Sony developers had. I think they mostly had either Pentium 266 MHz processors, Windows 95, and 2 to 5 gig hard drives, and only 32 MB or 64 MB of RAM. So this is a pretty beefy rig for PS1 development with a DTL-H2000. So yeah. So there you have it. Those are the hardware upgrades I've done to my DTL-H2000 workstation PC ever since I put it together back in November of last year. And as you can see, Quake 2 is running great on it with the S3 Savage 4 running in hardware accelerated OpenGL mode, of course. And also the OPL3 portion of the Yamaha YMF724 also works great with Adlib Tracker 2, which is my program of choice for Adlib music tracking. But I cannot demonstrate it to you because I don't have speakers set up for this setup. So yeah, but it works, and it works beautifully as well. So I guess this is pretty much it for this video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want. And as always, thanks for watching. LameGuy64 is signing out, and see you later.